أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وخاتم النبيين البشير النذير السراج المنير رحمة الله للعالمين. Dear brothers and dear sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are back at the same time and same place that we meet every week in the presence of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And hopefully we are always in the presence of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, not just this hour or so every week, but throughout all of the hours of the week as much as we can. We will continue with, before I say what I'm going to say, it's a relief to be with the meanings of Allah, to understand what Allah Azza wa Jal is saying. I don't know why Muslims have shown a weakness in communicating with the Book of Allah. They learn other languages, they specialize in other languages. Even those who read and write Arabic, everyone seems to be a stranger to the Quran. This is not supposed to be the case. We're supposed to be as comfortable and as relaxed with the words of the Quran so that we can feel a closeness to Al-Khaliq, Al-Bari', Al-Musawwir. Yahdi man yasha'u ila siratin mustaqim. We are still in Surat Yusuf, and we're approaching the end of Surat Yusuf. Maybe next week or the week after we can conclude the meanings, the explanation of the meanings of these ayat. So let us begin where we left off. We left off last week when the brothers of Yusuf had gone to their father and they explained to him what happened when they were in Egypt, Misr. And they said to him at the end, after explaining everything which we went through last week, they said to him to ask Allah to forgive them. He said, and here's where we begin this week's explanation of these ayat. قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. He said, Yaqub said to his sons, I will in time ask my sustainer to forgive you. There's a subtlety here. I think we are here to learn. All of us are learning throughout life. Even this speaker who is with you considers himself a learner more than anything else. So the word in this ayah, قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي. The word سوف, there are two articles in the Arabic language, and some people get allergic when we use the word Arabic. We are all Muslims, and we are all past and post the asabiyat of nationalism and sectarianism and all this other stuff. So no one feel those funny feelings when someone mentions the language of the Quran as being the Arabic language. And we covered this at the beginning, the first ayat in this surah, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا. Now, these two articles سوف, which is in this ayah, قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي. There's another one, and it's just the scene. Both of them have the same general meaning, which in English is like I will or I shall. But there's a delicate difference between both of them, and that is when you use the word, when the word sawfa is used, it means in the extent of time, depending on the context, or in the distant future. وَلَسَوْفَ another ayah in Surat al-Duha, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And in the passage of time, Allah is saying He will give يُعْطِيكَ, meaning the Prophet Muhammad alayhi as-salatu was-salam, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ, your sustainer will give you in the passage of time, meaning not immediately. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى, and therefore you shall become satisfied or pleased. And the understanding of this ayah could be in the years ahead in the Prophet's life, or it could mean in al-akhirah, in the afterlife, or it could mean both of them, because there's no contradiction in meaning. So the word sawfa is in time, I will, and whatever comes after that. In this ayah, sawfa astaghfiru lakum rabbi. In due time, I will ask my sustainer to forgive you. Yaqub is saying this to his sons. The other article is only the letter sin. سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ, another ayah in the Quran. The people who are foolish will say. And this means in the immediate sense, meaning after you speak to them, this is what they're going to say. Or they will say this in the very near future, like tomorrow or the day after, or next week, in the near time frame. قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Indeed, He is, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yaqub's sustainer, in the ayah Rabbi, He is indeed al-Ghafur, the one who will definitely forgive your past mistakes and sins, Ar-Rahim, and will be merciful towards your potential future mistakes and sins. Innahu huwa al-Ghafuru ar-Rahim. Now the transition, the ayat, this was ayah number 98. We go to ayah number 99. And all of a sudden, this ayah relocates us, refocuses our minds and our thinking. It says, فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ. And when they, the brothers of Yusuf, when they entered into where Yusuf was, so now they're no longer with their father. They made the journey. The ayat didn't tell us they made that journey and went back to Yusuf, but it is commonsensically understood. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ. Awa means he took in, or he greeted, or he accommodated his parents, Abawayhi. I want to take just a moment here to deal with the feminist masculine confusion that takes place. Literally speaking, abawayhi means his two fathers. Ab is father. Aba is the plural, fathers. Abawayhi, abaway or abawa, depending on where the word is in the sentences, has to do with the grammar of the language. So here it says, Yusuf took in, accommodated, and greeted his two, literally, fathers. This is what happens to the Western thinking mind that has been infested with this masculinity, femininity issue. If we wanted to literally translate this, it would not come out as his father and mother or his parents. It would come out as his two fathers. But we cannot understand the Quran in this fashion. We can't interject the Western language and the Western customs and the Western mind and the Western philosophies. We cannot interject them and then fool around with the language of the Quran, because we have to be literalists. So we have to understand the Quran independent, the way it is speaking to us, not going through the Western mind, and then after going through the Western mind, coming to us and telling us what it means. And we'll encounter this with another word shortly. We're dealing here with the calcified minds. فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه. There's no particular definition of how a person would greet another person. Greetings are not a matter of particularly defined words or behavior. Some people may greet other people just by presenting them with words of greetings, salutations, assalamu alaikum, or good morning or good evening, and there's a number of greetings that one person may exchange with another. But another form of greeting may be shaking hands. So you can have both of them together. You verbally greet someone and you shake their hand. Another form of greeting is you hug a person. Another form of greeting is, in addition to hugging the person, you may place a couple of kisses on their cheeks. And there are cultural issues that are involved with greetings here, but the bottom line is there's no particular Islamically defined form of greeting. It's just showing a person is welcoming another person. It can be done in a certain ways, and this ayah doesn't specify exactly how that greeting was. But we knew that the greeting went as far, it wasn't only a greeting, it went as far as accommodating these visitors who are Yusuf's brothers. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ وَقَالَ ادْخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. And he said to them, enter into Misr, Egypt, insha'Allah, with Allah's decree and willingness and determination. Aminin, in a state of security now. You're safe. So in this area, we have two entrances. We have the immediate entrance, in which these brothers entered into the courtyard, or in today's language, the office of Yusuf. And then we have Yusuf telling them, now you enter Egypt, and you have to feel secure and safe. Udkhulu Misra insha Allahu aminin. I want to take a moment with the word Misr. Misr is the only only country in the world that is given a name in the Quran. Country. I'm not talking about a city. I'm not talking about an area. I'm talking about a country. Misr is the only country that is mentioned by name in the Quran. This doesn't mean those who are from Egypt, from Misr, can feel nationalistic about anything, or begin to build a case of look, our country is mentioned in the Quran and there's no other country that is mentioned in the Quran. There are civilizations that are mentioned in the Quran. There are power structures that are mentioned in the Quran. When we read about غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, we read about Ar-Rum, we read about Hud, we read about Thamud, we read about Ashab al-Ras. All of these are power structures. They're not countries per se. The only country is Misr. And that should not, just like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions at the beginning of this surah, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, it refers to the Quran as being a Quran of the Arabic language. That doesn't mean, some Arabic speakers are going to are supposed to get some type of sense of superiority over others. And when the Quran mentions Misr here and in other ayat, that doesn't mean that whoever is from Egypt is going to feel some type of superiority or something. Look, we are the only country that are mentioned in the Quran. وَرَفَعَ, and then the ayah 100 says, وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. And Yusuf elevated or raised his, once again, Abawayhi, his parents, his father and mother, unto his throne, the throne of that land. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And they all went into the formation of sujood to him, meaning to Yusuf. Here is where we are going to encounter that rigid, calcified, and stubborn type of notion that they will say, look, this is not the right way to understand the ayah. What's wrong with understanding it this way? We, like the previous word that said وَآوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ, Yusuf accommodated and brought in and greeted his parents. That's a sign of respect. Also here, whether the word here وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا, the word sujjada in a sujood formation, this word here has a linguistic origin, and it has a shar'i extension of meaning. The linguistic origin is simply means to pay respect. And the Shara'i extension of that meaning is to go into the sujood configuration when you are in prayer, in a salah. The sajda, you put your forehead on the ground, that is sujood. These, a particular group of people, they have a very almost inapproachable way of understanding these words and these ayat. What's wrong? I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can't tolerate what Allah is saying. Take another ayah in the Quran. إِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. And bear in mind, when your sustainer said to al-malaika, in one definition, the angels, usjudu li Adam, pay respect and prostrate yourselves to Adam. This is Allah telling the angels to do that. Are the angels committing some form of shirk when they are obeying Allah? Is bowing down. In one of the cultures in the Far East, in Japan, in those areas, they make ruku'ah for a person as a matter of greeting. Is that to be understood as some type of shirk? This mentality that has been financed in the past a couple of hundred years, well, it has been promoted for a couple of hundred years, but financed in the course of the past 50 or 60 years, up until this very day. They have a lot of money in the Arabian Peninsula, and they finance this type of mentality. And it's about time that we outgrow this and we break through this shell and understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا وَقَالَ يَا أَبَتِ هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ. Yusuf at that moment said to his father, my dear father, this is the meaning of the vision that I had. And this goes back to the beginning of the surah when Yusuf said to his father, إِنِّي أَرَى أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ قال يا أبت إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين. Yusuf said to his father, I saw 11 planets or 11 stars, and the sun and the moon. I visualized them. He didn't see them with his eyes, but this was in a dream. He saw in his dream 11 stars or planets and the sun and the moon. He saw them in a state of prostration and respect to him. This is not the ibadah prostration. Obviously, the sun and the moon and those 11 planets. And this brings us also to an issue. I want to just touch on this very briefly. The solar system, we still have, if you care to review the information, we still have some people saying that there are 9 planets in the solar system, and some who say there are 10, and some who say that there are 11. I didn't come across any information that said less or more than that, so it's 9, 10, or 11. But it's interesting here in this context, when Yusuf says, إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا, could this be in reference to those 9 planets, that are those 11 planets that are in the solar system, in addition to the sun and the moon? So is it the whole solar system, in addition to the sun and in the moon, that were meant in this dream to be interpreted as the 11 brothers of Yusuf along with his father and his mother. قال يا أبت هذا تأويل رؤياي من قبل قد جعلها ربي حقا. Indeed, my sustainer has made it a matter of truth and justice. After all that Yusuf had to go through, and after all of what his family had to go through, in all of them in their own ways, finally it culminated in this family being reunited. وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي. I have to say here, رُؤْيَا الْأَنْبِيَاء حَقٌّ. Whatever the prophets see in their dream is a matter of truth and justice. Shaitan does not interfere in what they see in their dreams, unlike the rest of us. Sometimes we see things, wait a minute here, I think there's some significant meaning to this, because it was very clear and it was sort of radiating with meaning. Some dreams are like that. But some other dreams are like foggy and they're confused and it's just like you don't know what to make out of that. But when it comes to prophets, if they see a vision when they are sleeping, if they see things during the time when they are not awake, it has a very important meaning. Ibrahim alayhi salam says, إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. Ibrahim says to his son Ismail, I've definitely seen a dream, and in it I see that I am to butcher you. I am to slaughter you. His own son. A dream of a prophet that has an order in it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Yusuf says, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ. Yusuf is speaking to his parents and he's speaking to his brothers. And he says that Allah has worked whatever is better by me. In the Quran, in the word ahsana is followed by a couple of prepositions. One of them is ila, and the other one is the letter ba, b. Here, ahsana bi idh akhrajani min as-sijn. He has made better by me as he has discharged me from prison. Ahsana ila means you give a betterment to. What comes to mind here is another ayah, Luqman, his people saying to him, وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And here, Ahsin in the context, because Luqman is one of these billionaires in his time, and he has all of this wealth unmatched by anyone else. You can say he's the Bezos of his time, or even more than that. So in this context, ahsan ila means to give of what you have for betterment, for improvement. So ahsana bi in this ayah, not ahsana ila. Wa ahsana bi idh akhrajani min as-sijn. Notice here that Yusuf skipped the other details in which Allah worked His will through him for what is better. He didn't mention that Allah ahsana bihi when he was rescued from that well that his brothers put him in. He didn't mention that Allah ahsana bihi when he was saved from that sexual temptation trap of Imra'at al-Aziz. He could have mentioned these things, but he, to be on the favorable and light and endearing side with the members of his own family, he mentioned that Allah has improved conditions of Yusuf by Yusuf when Allah had Yusuf discharged from prison. This is one of the highest ranking people in the country, and he's reminding, or he's telling his family of how Allah was looking after him and taking care of him. وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِّنَ الْبَدْوِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought you from that nomadic lifestyle that you were in. Al-Badu is the rural life as opposed to urban life. There's city life and there is village life. Or there's living in high rises and living in tents. These two different things here. Yusuf now obviously was in a cosmopolitan setup. He was in a society that was well developed, a structure that was what you may call in today's words cultured and civilized. And his own family was living in al-Badu, nomadic, primitive, elementary life. And he says to them, Allah has caused this improvement. In addition to me being discharged from prison, you, my family, having come to Egypt, meaning almost being discharged from your nomadic life. And here we are, من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. After a shaitan had interrupted between me and my brothers. Nazagha has the meaning of poke, like jab. Nazagha الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. The shaitan came and sort of nabbed between. He sort of interjected himself, nazagha shaitan, between me and my brothers. Notice the high moral quality and character of Yusuf alayhi salam. He could have easily turned to his brothers and said, I think you were wrong in treating me the way you treated me. But that would have been an attitude and a statement that would put distance between the members of one family. And in order for him to more or less say, let bygones be bygones, now Allah has worked His will through your misunderstanding, meaning Yusuf is telling in more words than he said, he's telling his brothers that you've misunderstood me, you've misunderstood my father, you've misunderstood what family life is all about, how this togetherness should have been, instead of you having this superiority, discriminatory attitude, the prejudice inside of your usbah. Instead of, he didn't say any of that. He said, بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي إن ربي لطيف لما يشاء. Yusuf goes on to say, my sustainer is Latif. Latif means he is subtle and he is delicate. For those who are familiar with another Arabic word, it's called kathafa. Kathafa is something that is opaque, or condensed, or impacted, or thick, depending on, of course, where it is. But when Yusuf is saying, Inna Rabbi Latif, that is in reference to Allah's will in the behavior of men when they cannot detect Allah in what they are doing. These brothers, when they treated Yusuf the way they did not detect Allah's will in what they are doing. The Imra'at al-Aziz, when she was alluring, enticing Yusuf towards her, she was not detecting the presence of Allah in what she was doing. Putting Yusuf into jail, those who made that decision were not detecting Allah's subtlety in what they are doing. And so Yusuf is referring to the involvement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of these developmental stages throughout life. Yusuf was not unaware. Yusuf was aware of Allah's presence in all of this. But even his brothers, who claim that they are the cream of the crop of their family and of their community, and they did not realize that Allah is working His will in all of this. Innahu huwa al-alimul hakim. Indeed, Yusuf is saying, indeed, he, meaning in reference to Allah, is al-alim. All of the knowledge is His, and the wisdom that is embedded in His knowledge is also His. Because you can have knowledge right now with the electronic memories and the technology, you can stash so much information way beyond what you think the human mind is capable of. But what use is that if there's no hikmah in it? And that may lead us to another discussion about how they are developing artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence itself may become a threat to humanity. It's not just information, it's not just knowledge, it's the wisdom and the sagacity that is embedded, should be embedded in that information and knowledge. And then in Ayah 101, رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. Yusuf now, as is expected, he knows he is with Allah, and he knows Allah is with him. This is the character of those who are committed to Allah. During hardships of life and during times of ease and comfort, they don't lose sight of Allah. Rabbi قد آتيتني من الملك وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث. You have given me dominion and you have taught me how to understand the meanings of life. Let's spend a few minutes here with the word mulk. Rabbi qad, because it's a Quranic word, it's repetitious. You'll find it in many surahs and ayat. Rabbi qad ataytani min al-mulk, my sustainer. Well, before we get to mulk, let's take a couple of minutes with the word Rabbi. Rabb. Who is Rabb? A Rabb. Of course, in many of the translations, you'll find the word Lord that means Rabb. A much more accurate word would be sustainer. And because I'm working on the tafsir and the translation of the Quran, I have to credit the late Marhum Muhammad Asad for having caught a more accurate translation of the word Rabb. The word Rabb means, in the first instance, the creator of something from nothing, the provider of something to someone who doesn't have it, and to nourish life and to reproduce life. All of these functions are called the functions of a Rabb or Rububiyyah. And so a Rabb in these definitions, he is a Rabb of everyone. He is a Rabb of a mu'min and he's a Rabb of a kafir. He's a Rabb of a Muslim and he's a Rabb of a non-Muslim, etc., etc. Because all of these all of us were created from nothing. And then when we are in need, we have access to what we need. That accessibility is courteous of our Rabb. And then we are nourished courtesy of our sustainer. And then we reproduce courtesy of our sustainer. All of these four characteristics are common among all human beings. That's why we say Rabb al-Alameen. No one says Rabb al-Mu'mineen, Rabb al-Muslimin, we say Alhamdulillah in the Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillah Rabb al-Alameen. Allah doesn't give sustenance to some people, access to sustenance to some people, and deny it to others. All people have access to sustenance. All people are given life. All people were created from nothing, etc. ربي قد آتيتني من الملك. الملك, there's three words in the Quran. We have الملك, we have malakut, and we have milk. Milk, mim kasra, milk. Milk is when a human being owns something. I own a book. I own a shirt. I own a car. I own a house. So whatever I own as a human being is called milk. The word mulk with a dhamma on the meme is you own what other people own. So you have a king or someone who is up there in the political and in the social ladder. He owns what you own, meaning eventually, in today's world, it's like the state. They say the state owns, because what you own, let's say you're living in a certain country, and let's say you own a piece of land. Eventually, the state has the right to say that that piece of land, if it determines that, of course, it has to be in a court of law usually, that is for the public interest, repossessed by us because of public domain and public interest and these types of justifications. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He owns what we own. In an ayah in Surat Al Imran, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ, say, O Allah, you are Malik al-Mulk. You are the owner of this mulk, whatever can be possessed. You are the ultimate owner. And then we have the word malakut. Malakut is specifically belongs to Allah. No human can have access to malakut. Malakutu samawati wal ard. When you encounter this word in the Quran, speak about malakut as-samawati wal ard. We have no access. Even if we wanted and put everything together, we can't go out there in space and say, and register space in our name. This belongs to me. However, all of humanity, to put together all of its potential, will have no access to malakut as-samawati wal ard. It's impossible. So that's a domain specifically belonging to Allah. So we go back. Sometimes we need to explain this because it's important to understand these meanings in the Quran. رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. You see, Allah is always present. There's no losing sight of Allah. He dwells in quality individuals like prophets. فاطر السماوات والأرض. You have caused السماوات والأرض to be separated from each other. أنت ولي في الدنيا. You are my premier in this dunya. توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين. Cause me to expire as a Muslim, someone who surrenders to you, someone who submits to you, and have me join as-salihin. I think the word salihin is understood. So we said every human being is under the rububiyyah of Allah. Everyone, regardless of their faith or philosophy or family or whatever. They all are given, but Allah provides for all. But the mu'minun, when we speak about mu'mineen, we are speaking about those who receive from Allah's uluhiyyah. Here we shift from what is physical and biological to what is psychological and social. So al-mu'minun are, that's why we say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. We don't say ashhadu an la rabba illallah. We say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Okay. And then we go on, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. The Prophet of Allah didn't know anything about Prophet Yusuf before this Quran was revealed to him. He knew nothing about this. So Allah is saying here, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. We make you privy to it in a manner that is undetectable. Al-Wahi cannot be detected by the human senses. If Allah is revealing something to His Prophet, the meaning of Wahi or revelation is undetectable communication. ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ. This news, this information that is coming to you comes from al-Ghayb. It comes from what is not in the realm of your senses and is not within the realm of your knowledge. نوحيه إليك وما كنت لديهم إذ أجمعوا أمرهم وهم يمكرون. You were not there. Allah is telling the Prophet, and hopefully those who are against the Prophet are listening. He's telling them, you were not there when the makr, the scheming was going on in the life of Yusuf. The family scheming of his brothers, the royal scheming in the highest offices there, Imra'at al-Aziz, the scheming that was going on when he was put in, to be put in prison. Allah's Prophet knew nothing about any of this. وَمَا كُنْتَ لَدَيْهِمْ إِذْ أَجْمَعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ وَهُمْ يَمْكُرُونَ. The details that went into these plots against Yusuf. Anyone, I mean, just all it needs is an objective, impartial, and thinking mind. That's all it takes. How would a person like Muhammad know any of all of these developments if it were not for him receiving this information from Allah? Tabarakat wa ta'alat hikmatuhu. وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And most people, even though you may do your best, even though you try as much as you can, most of the people are not committed. وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. This is an important lesson that we don't encounter it only here in Surat Yusuf. It's in other positions and in other contexts and in other times throughout reading this book of direction and guidance. We see that it's almost like the world is meant to rotate, just like physically the world is rotating according to physical laws. The social world, I'm not talking about the material world, I'm talking about the social and psychological worlds. They rotate around the fixed principles in individuals who are committed to Allah. That's how the world works. وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. I think, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and I know I'm lagging behind. There's a lot of important things that are happening in the world. And I think we should have a clear mind about what's happening in this world, because it affects all of us, wherever we may be, as long as we are uh, honoring our relationship with Allah, the Almighty, the All Knowing. As long as we are honoring this relationship with Him, there are things that are happening to us, and we should be aware of that. Um, the most important types of developments have to do with this United Arab Emirates right now out in the open. We've been living this issue for the past, yours truly has been living it almost all his life. But let's say in the general Muslim public, at least, we should have been living this nightmare of clandestine relationship between those who are ruling in Arabia and those who are ruling in Hebraica, those who are ruling in the Arabian Peninsula, and those who are ruling in Palestine. There's always been a backdoor, clandestine, secret relationship among them, between them, always, in all of these years. Now it has surfaced. Being that we are still in the month of Muharram, I was speaking to one of the brothers today, and he was saying certain things from his own perspective, but I would like to say that the lesson that we have not been able to learn is that the tragedy of Karbala took place because of the confluence of interests between those who were defeated in Mecca by the Prophet of Allah and the Muhajirin and Al Ansar with him. Quraysh and Banu Umayyah were defeated by and large in Mecca. Yahud, Banu Israel, were defeated in Medina, Al-Madinah, and in Khaybar. Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, and their counterparts in the northern Arabian Peninsula, they were defeated. The Byzantines were defeated in Tabuk and in Mu'tah. All of these have their details. So we have power structures that were defeated, and they wanted to come back, and they came back together. All of these, this is what's happening today. It didn't happen in history alone. But our problem is some of us are so emotionally drunk, and others are so emotionally detached and frozen that we can't learn from our own selves. What is taking place today is an eye-opener to understand our own history. I hope we can see it in that light, and I hope you understand what I'm referring to. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to maintain this closeness with Him and this relief that comes from understanding His enlightening ayat and His guiding book. وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.